share my screen so y'all can see the slides, and I will drop into chat a link to those slides if you'd like them as well. If you're typing them in manually, do know that you'll need to type that letter E capitalized. And you should be seeing my slides now. And Holly, we can get started.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks for hosting us, and thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. So, quick introduction here. I am Holly Kelly. There I am, and I am a regional ed tech coordinator along with Eric Santos. And here in that little purple map, I have the eastern part of the state. In my position, I have this awesome job that I get to constantly learn. And luckily, I'm a relentless learner, as with Eric as well. And I get to provide a lot of professional development to a lot of different districts and find folks like yourselves as well. I'm in my 16th year of education, almost done with my 16th year of education, actually, with the year rounding up. My background is English language arts teacher, library media specialist, where really my passion for all things technology stemmed in. And then I also hold a double master's as well in counseling. My email address and telephone number and Twitter is there as well. So Eric, would you like to say hello?
Sure, thank you. And my name is Eric Santos, and just like Holly, I am a regional ed tech coordinator. I serve the Chicagoland region, the purple counties that you see in that picture there. My contact information is on the screen as well. I am also in my 16th year of public education. So look at that. And I've got double masters as well, not in social work or counseling or anything though, but ed tech and curriculum instruction. I was a middle school science and STEM teacher, as well as serving for a few years as a tech learning coach. I put up there some of my coaching experience, both in athletics. I'm mostly a basketball guy, but I've also coached soccer and baseball, and I've coached some club teams after school as well. Some clubs that turned into teams, and those would be chess, robotics, and STEAM club, specifically Rube Goldberg related. And I post those there for a reason. Later on, when we talk about running your esports program, why I posted that will become relevant a little bit later. So that's me, and that's us, and let's get started.
Yeah, and Eric, thanks for doing this together. I'm really excited because this is the first webinar that Eric and I are co-hosting. So if he or I are kind of having one of those moments, just bear with us, as it takes a little bit of practice to perfect your craft, as we'll see with esports as well. And excuse my humor or lack thereof with these bold words in green. I've added for some fun language that sometimes we'll hear our students saying, or if you're a gamer, maybe you know of some of these words. So I'll quickly mention some of them. Here's a loose agenda. This is way more, and I like to preface it here. Both Eric and I are in the camp that sharing more is better. With everyone's different knowledge base, some of you are gamers, some of you aren't, and you really just want to all share the commonality of having a supportive club or competitive team for your students. So with those different knowledge backgrounds, some of you may have a club or competitive team started, some may not. I'd like to add in some different resources, because some of you are in the position where you have to maybe convince your administration, or maybe some of you know nothing about esports, including the background. So definitely feel free to come back to this resource and this slide deck later for your reference. So the first one here on our loose agenda is XP, or your experience points. Typically, the more points you get means that you can advance to the next level, which always brings new abilities, stat increases, and better weapons as you move into new levels with those XP standing for experience points. So let's go ahead and get started. To ponder through our time together there on the next slide, Santos, I want you to just focus on the minimum, the target, and the outrageous. And one of my colleagues always refers to the Monday versus someday, the outrageous being that someday, and the minimum is something that you can do today or Monday. So while we go through, both Eric and I, think about the minimum thing that you can do with what you learned today. And maybe that is just being present and staying on this call and taking something away from it. That's great. What is your target goal from what you learned today? What's something, the minimum that you can do with with that? What is your target? And then what's the most outrageous thing you can do with what you learned today? And maybe that's someday starting a competitive team, or going out and looking at different places that you can buy apparel and getting this party started. So take a minute to just think about that. And throughout our session today, our targets for Eric and I, we really want to provide the knowledge base to advocate for you to be able to advocate an esports program at your school or district. Provide a full resource bank for all your needs to get a program started, which hopefully this slide deck will provide that. And have the confidence to start a program, no matter your skill level, to be able to support your students. And then have that resource to come back to, which is that full resource bank. Eric, did you want to add anything there for goals that you wanted to share, or does that cover it?
I think that totally covers it. And just know that you're going to see a lot of information on the slides that we show. We are not going to read all of them to you, so don't freak out. But like Holly mentioned, we like to just have that resource for you to go back and read in more detail later. And there's lots of links for you to click and explore in more detail later. So yeah, so let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome, noobs, sometimes spelled Noob or Newb. And that is someone who is clearly new to the game. This can be considered an insult when someone makes basic mistakes. So if I was playing Fortnite, I would totally be a noob, but not necessarily always an insult. So we're going to cover some very light background that you can come back to. And the first one is, what is esports, there on the next slide? Well, point blank, it's an international phenomenon. It is a world of competing video gaming, and it is incredibly fast growing. There's millions of fans and billions of dollars up for grabs. And the income and the amount of money coming in does not even include, I think there's a later number there, it doesn't even include the gambling aspect of it, which is there as well. So keep that in mind. Esports, it stands for electronic sports. And Santos, make sure if anything's misspelled on here, or if anyone wants to drop into chat, I always love when someone calls me out on any kind of errors. It makes it better, so let me know. But esports stands for electronic sports. It's the video gaming competition, and the huge thing that's making it go boom is that streamed live on virtual platforms. There are billions of people that can watch live streamed events internationally. It was once a leisure activity, some leisure activity for some, but it is now a billion-dollar industry with massive brand endorsements and people making sometimes seven-figure earnings. Santos, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I'd like to just ask, esports is probably something you've heard of most recently, but I'd love to give you a little challenge, and I'll put it in the chat as well. What do you think was the first year? What year was the first video game tournament ever held? And then what year was the first esports event? So you can quickly just type in the chat your answers to that. Or if you're watching this later, just think to yourself, what was the first year a video game tournament was held? And what was the first year that an esports event was held? All right, so hold that answer in your head and let's see if you were close at all. You might be surprised to find out that 1972 was the year that the first video hosted game tournament was ever held at Stanford University. And the first official esports event that had about 2,000 people in attendance was in 1997. So, we're talking pre-2000, esports is up and running, and obviously gaming has been, in general, has been around for a little while. So there's a timeline here. I won't read through all of it for you, but you can kind of see the evolution of video gaming as a sport that we now call esports. Something interesting to know about, if you've heard of Twitch, it is a popular platform for live streaming games. That's just over 10 years old at this point, and now just in the last couple of years, there are 500 million, probably more than that now in 2022, 500 million viewers globally, and an industry that's now $1 billion industry. And in fact, I heard a stat recently that there were more viewers in the last year in America of esports than any other major athletic sports league except the NFL. And esports is on pace to outrank the NFL in terms of viewership within the next couple of years.
And it has outdone Thursday night football for NFL.
Yep, take that Thursday.
Mhm. So, oh, go ahead. So, what do you think the top prize? There we go. What do you guys think the top prize amount is? So, I know for Eric's challenge there, the chat button for those of you, if you're driving, please do not use the chat. But those of you that aren't driving, if you want to participate, just to put that out there, go ahead and drop into chat bottom of the Zoom screen. What do you think the top prize amount is for an event, for an esports tournament? Top prize amount. Any guessers? We'll give it a second. It's funny too, Eric, the contest, the National Space Invaders there, for the 1980, it was the top prize was an Atari table video game. It was worth $2,000. So that was back in what, 1980. Okay, so Kristen, we got one, we got two. 1 million versus $2 million. Let's see what it is. All right, so $2,040 million. So we're talking lots of money for that prize pool. So definitely increase your numbers there, Matt and Kristen, by a large percentage. Johan No Tail and No with a 0 for Dota 2 won 7.2 million as the top prize there that you can see. And then we can see that 2000. There was also for the Stanford University, it was a year subscription to Rolling Stone, even before that 1980 date. That was the top prize for the winner for that. Yeah, right, Matt, mind blown there in chat. So kind of crazy that that prize pool is going to only continuously go up as it gets more viewership and sponsorships as well. So it's crazy to think about how lucrative it is in the competitive world. And there, Eric's going to talk about some sponsors that make these prize pools pretty massive.
Yeah, and just to kind of drive home the point of how big esports is nationally and in the world, these are some of the big names that are now sponsoring esports events with even more, I'm sure even more to come. And those are some very well-known household names of large companies that are putting their money behind this. So it definitely a force to be reckoned with. There's some stats on these slides, and Holly, you can jump in if you'd like to speak to any of them, but obviously just numbers showing, you know, what you need to know about where esports is currently. So go ahead and jump in, Holly.
Yeah, and we were talking about the NFL, but NBA as well. In 2016, League of Legends, it was a 7 to 8 hour tournament. So definitely needing endurance for that, as we'll talk about some of that later with the balance of health life, which is one of the what are we calling that? What was that? One of the the negatives, or Eric, I can't think of the word. The myths, the tall tales with, kids just sit in front of their computers all day, but having to sit for 7, 8 hours definitely takes a level of endurance there. But anyways, getting back, it drew in 36 million viewers, and that would have been 5 more million than the NBA finals. And that was a sellout crowd there. So, and that's in 2016. 2006 billion gamers globally, and is daily increasing. One thing that Eric and I both agree on, I think here, 90% of the world's pros, so this isn't high school, this would be the world's pros, are estimated to be male. But nearly 50% of gamers are female. So one of the things to ask yourself, why are there so many male and not female competitors in the global arena there? So Eric, did you want to talk anything else about that?
No, I think these are good, important stats, and I'm glad that you bring up that gender issue that exists in the esports world, and it's something that teachers who are starting programs at schools can definitely try to address as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we'll talk about the average age here when trying to recruit some people to start your program. I'm looking here. Yep, the NFHS, you're going to hear a lot of acronyms as if this is your first time, but recognize esports as an official sport. and more than 8,600 high schools started video game teams. So definitely and these numbers will just exponentially increase over the next months and years.
And the one stat that I want to throw out there is 24 million gamers identifying as having a disability. I think when you talk
Mhm.
about one of the things that we'll talk about today about why you would want to start an esports program, and part of it is inclusivity of all students. And this is a great opportunity to include some students that maybe would not typically have an opportunity in a traditional athletic club or an athletic team at your school, and this is an opportunity for them to shine. So with that said, and just knowing that you have access to many of those stats there in this presentation, we'll move on to leveling up the perks. Holly, do you want to talk about what level up means in terms of
Yeah, a
knowledge?
level up is gaining enough points to be able to enable a player or a character to go to a higher level. So we are gonna level up this and go to the next area of esports.
Yeah, so this is just briefly before we get into the nuts and bolts of running a club, just a little bit of philosophy and about the why of starting an esports program. This is, I've got my source here that you can click on for more information, but I found this awesome 5 pillars that Tau Esports put together for their program. And really, I kind of mentioned this first one, redefining athletic culture. Kids want to be a part of a team. They want to be, and they need to be connected to their school. And so thinking of this as an opportunity to maybe capture some of those students who don't otherwise always get involved in things or don't have a way that they can, shine. An esports program might provide that to them. And that goes along with diversifying opportunities for student participation. Students need to be connected to school one way or another. I mean, there's plenty of research showing that having a connection to school beyond just showing up and going to class every day increases student success in the long term. It's good for their mental health and their physical health to feel like they're a part of a team and they're connected with a group with a common goal. And definitely more and more, there are more STEM and sports and esports related pathways for students going into career in college. And then finally, honoring the importance of play. I mean, there's a reason that so much of ed tech is geared towards gamifying or taking some of those game related aspects and adding them into the educational world and making learning fun. Sometimes we forget that students learn best and learn well when they're playing, and the act of playing a game itself has so many educational components and opportunities for it that these are important pillars, I think, overall to think about as your base for why you would start a program. So a little myth busting, and I won't read through all of this, but basically you may run into some of these roadblocks and some of these myths as you're starting a program, whether it's talking to an administrator and getting them on board with funding it, or if you're an administrator looking for teachers who are going to facilitate the program, you might run into some of this. Selling this to parents and getting parents to sign their kids up. Or even just in general, word of mouth, comments you might hear from other teachers, comments you might hear from other students, just kind of being ready for those and knowing how to combat some of those myths. For example, it's not a real sport. We call it esports, but it's not a real sport. Well, if you think about what a real sport involves, it involves generally teams or different sides. It involves competition. It involves sportsmanship, leadership. It involves keeping score. And we can talk all day about the physical aspects of different sports and what sports are more physically competitive than others, but there's a physical and a mental aspect to esports that I think is important. You might also hear, "Oh, this is for nerds," or "This is for geeks," and those are the labels we want to kind of do away with. And so maybe this is an opportunity to have those students. Again, if you've got students who maybe traditionally fell into that kind of role, maybe giving them an opportunity to gain some confidence and show to others, hey, no, like this is for everybody. Like anyone can be a gamer, and it's okay maybe to be a nerd or what might used to be thought of as a nerd. Um, that's cool. Like gaming is cool. There's NBA players. You can do a quick Google search and find several NBA players who are gamers who are on regularly and gaming with the average person out there. And so it's not just for nerds, it's for anybody. I consider myself a gamer as well. Maybe I consider myself a nerd too, and that's okay. But I game regularly. I'm part of what I might call the Mario Brothers generation. I've now that I have kids that are gaming age, I've gotten back into those gaming systems. And so that's just something you might run into, and maybe a stereotype you can help bust. Too much screen time. I mean, this is a legitimate concern, but that's just kind of the way the world is going. And I think one of the big points here to bring up is this is an opportunity to teach responsible screen time. Teaching students don't learn to be responsible with something unless they're given the opportunity to do the thing. So helping them monitor the amount of time that they're spending on a screen. taking value from the screen time. All screen time is not created equal. There's educational time, there's worthwhile time, collaborative time, and then there's time on screen that's less so. So if you really take advantage of the esports time on screen, you can look at it as a valuable use of time, and one that they can also learn from. So teaching students how to take breaks, how to manage and monitor their biological needs, and making sure they're taking care of those. So hopefully some of those, arguments and some of those points are things that you can bring up when you come across those myths, and really just kind of pushing the benefits of an esports program. It's more than just, we're just going to press buttons all day. You can create this program and make it what you want it to be. You can build those opportunities for students to feel like they have a community. You can give them coaching, even if you're not an expert in the game or in the, in esports in general. You can coach them on what they need to know to work together with someone else. You can coach them on sportsmanship, being a good loser, being a good winner, right? Teach them how to manage their time. Just like any other sport or club, they've got to have good grades and they've got to be engaged and behaving well in school in order to participate. Having that SEL component where you're using this as a way to outreach to students and talk to them, and again, make them feel connected and part of a community. So there's a lot of benefits and a lot of things that when you think about any sport, and again, as someone who's coached athletics, all those same underlying reasons that we have athletic sports, that we want to teach character development, exist and can be taught through esports as well.
Also, too, to add there, the gaming industry does have a level of an addiction rate attached to it. That's not a myth. The amazing thing about creating an esports club or competitive team is that we as adults have the opportunity and platform to teach our students that balance, as Eric said. And I just wanted to hit that home again, is teaching that balance between getting outside, eating healthy, taking care of oneself while also being a gamer. So we're not staying up until wee hours of the night and losing that sleep because we just keep leveling up and keep going. And the platform for having those teams really does allow us to teach that to our students and teach those good behaviors. And just going back, which you don't have to move the slides there, Eric, but with that, the 5 pillars, if you ever needed trivia, James O'Hagan is the person that created those and is a leader in connecting and promoting esports and is the leader. He's also, for trivia, considered the godfather of esports. So if you ever wanted to add that to a trivia game or add that to some of your fun curriculum for esports, I like to throw that in there. So I think, where are we next? We talked about benefits, and ultimately I had a colleague share this with me from Twitter. It was March 25th, so this was recently, and it was from a parent that shared this with a team leader for their esports program at their school. And ultimately for me, and like I said, with my background in counseling, that membership, that sense of belonging, and creating that platform and group for students to feel as though they belong to something is huge. And ultimately this parent shared their thanks and appreciation and affirmation for this program and what it's done for their child in a positive way. The increase of academics, because having that the minimum grade requirements, just like any other sports, is there. So we see an increase of grades and school attendance, because with those minimum requirements force kids to come to school and to participate and do well. So while they're participating in games, we see all these positive things also happening because of it. So like Eric said, it's important to be able to have that place for those kids, that group. Oh, okay. We're moving on to buff nerd. So here I go. A buff refers to a change a character makes, that they change their weapon to be more powerful in a way, versus conversely, the nerf is a change that reduces the power of an element while playing. So buff will increase, they'll make them more powerful. A nerf is the opposite there. And we're going to talk a little bit about the logistics. And feel free to drop into chat, Kristen. Feel free. I know you've added. If your school has an esports program, anyone else on the call, I can't see all of the people on the call there, but does your school have an esports program? Yes or no yet established? I threw that yes and no in there. So Kathy, hey, good to hear from you in chat. Kathy says no, not yet. Kristen, anyone else on the call, feel free to drop in if your school has an esports established program yet. And some of you may be saying, well, no, silly, that's why we're here, for how to get an esports program started. But I've done this before, and there's some people who had an esports program in their district and they moved districts. So, okay, Kristen, not in school right now. Yep, try and get background. Absolutely. Teresa, not yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on with the three components. There's three basic components of esports here, and we're talking about club, competitive, and then curricular. VEF there has some curriculum that is free and paid that you can check out. There's also some SEL esports curriculum, and we'll talk about other things that you can tie into with some of those reflection learning days that are usually tied into an esports club or program. Club, when you're starting a club, there is absolutely no right place to start. It's what your kids, you're just monitoring. Eric will talk about that here in a little bit, but that other component is competitive. And it is really important to remember when bringing this to administration, when you begin a competitive team, you really do get to represent the district to the state, which is very positive for your district and school, which we'll see here shortly as well. Moving on with the overview, this is not a one size fits all approach. So for those of you, I really do like these slides because they share some resources, but it allows us to begin thinking about the steps if you're concrete operational and need that. But just know, getting back, there's no one size fits all. So it depends how your program starts, that this will kind of begin taking off and the snowball will begin rolling here. But essentially, if we were to start somewhere, we need to establish a program. That may be the kids creating a proposal and getting kids to sign it. Maybe they're the leaders of it, and then trying to find someone to sponsor or coach their program. Or maybe it's you at your district where you're saying, I see and feel and acknowledge the value in having an esports program. Let's go ahead and get this started. And maybe you feel all that way, but you don't want to be the person that starts it. If that is the case, look to your robotics program, your gaming clubs, your anime clubs, your robotics clubs. The average gamer is 35 years old. 54% of adults play video games. So statistically, meaning that there's got to be someone in your building that can lead this mission and this program, if we're just looking at that statistically. So once we find that right person for the job to sponsor and coach, you usually always want to have two people, doing that and participating to share some of the weight. You would want to go through that approval, the proposal, getting your administration on board, and on, you don't have to move yet, but on the next slide, also communicating with your IT is really important from out the gate to get them on board, to let them know that you're going to be doing this, because they will have an integral part in your esports program at your school. Once you do that, you can determine your budget. It is really important at the very beginning to know how supportive your school is with the budget. Where is this budget coming from? Are there stipends that are going to be able to be offered? And if it is a sport and you are passionate that this is a sport, we should be able to have stipends involved there. There's a link there for grants that you can apply for, and then some funding. Like any other sport, we can have fundraisers. There is travel. Luckily, like football per student is $500. Esports is $250. That's significantly less. That's half the amount. So with that being said, travel is not a necessity. You don't have to travel unless you're taking your kids to big esports arenas or LAN events at other schools. The shoes, every team has the shoes that are required to be able to participate versus the shoes if students, the recommended versus if they're wanting to buy on their own. So that goes along with equipment. If you're supplying keyboards and mouse, they may want to bring in their gaming ones on their own, just like a student may have the required, the minimum shoe versus here's some other ones that you can choose from. from while playing basketball, similarly to esports there. And I have snacks there. Snacks is, it sounds silly, but depending on your policy at your school, if your club starts up right after school, you may have a requirement to be able to provide a snack. So where is that money? Who's bringing snacks? Just make sure you look at that when you're a first time club beginner. Equipment, consoles, PCs, there's another better slide further down that will talk about some of that. Once you kind of get those things established, you have a program, you have a person, you have a budget, you know how much money you have. And even if you don't have money, who's going to be bringing it? If it's bring your own device, that's okay, but determining that. Equipment, you want to be able to gather students. Okay, is there an interest? Advertise, posters, flyers, announce. There's a sample sign up sheet there. Send Google Forms out, send email groups. You can create that in Canva. There's a link there. But ultimately, one recommendation is do not limit yourself to that sign up sheet to only playing Super Smash Bros. It will only bring in a certain population. You want to be able to advertise multiple games and then have kids decide on the games you'll play to bring those kids through the door. And then also securing a location, setting up and tearing down, if it's in your classroom, is a lot of work. So trying to find a computer lab, even if there's at home, if the kids are playing at home, it does take away from that availability for kids to be able to have that feeling of membership if they're just playing at home, but you can always start there. But what are your at-home hours and where are you going to play? Is it in an old room? Is it in a storage closet? I've seen a large storage closet. I've seen a number of different places that people can secure a location. And let's go, by the way, that grant there is from the Varsity. It's VEF. It's Varsity Esports Foundation. It's a sister company to the EEN. They do support STEM learning and grants, but definitely you can pull in from STEM grants as well with esports. So just as a where money's coming from. The next slide here with the overview, IT department, pull them in. They're going to have to give you access to ports and website information. There's an example there, Discord. Some districts do not allow you to download apps to the devices. So that would be Discord. So you'd have to go through the web browser. And then also if you're hosting LAN events, places where a lot of kids would come into the gymnasium and play together, to be able to find that commonality, you would have to pull your IT director in. So make sure you're communicating that this is an idea. Coaching, facilitating, there's an example of code of conduct there that you'd want to share with students. And then also plan non-gaming content curriculum. That's through those life skills, that SEL, that health, some of that other curriculum as well. There's also the mark here, get Twitter yesterday. If you're thinking about this, students will add themselves and will follow the school's esports Twitter. So get it yesterday if you're thinking about this and you have the approval to go ahead. Host an interest meeting. So once you're at this point, you're going to host an interest meeting. You're going to set the expectations. All those kids are going to come in that room. You can set norms. You can provide that code of conduct for students. And you can also put out that Google form of what games they want to play. And that's with that first meeting as well, with that parent consent. Also get a few accounts set up. So there's Discord, a Facebook group, a Twitter there as well. And then also the UGC where you can report your game winnings. And this is after once all of those logistics have been worked out. I will mention UGC is not SOPA SOPA compliant. That data privacy thing that we've all been working on if your school district has been following all of those procedures. So you just want to add your team, not individual students, while keeping rank of your kids. And then ultimately you choose your games, and some games will be based off of what league you participate in, which we'll get to here. But ultimately, here's kind of, I know that was a little step by step, and Santos is probably like, yeah, that was a lot. But it is helpful to come back to and kind of check those boxes, like, am I doing this as a coach, to go through a basic. Eric, did you want to add anything to that, those two slides there?
Yeah, just a couple of quick heads up if anything here kind of caught you off guard. One comment here that was important. It was about like computer lab and home hours. Some teachers choose to say, we don't have the equipment here, or we're not going to try to use the equipment here at school. Let's have a set time at 4 p.m. or 4:30 p.m. Everybody get on this game and we're going to do this, or everybody get on and we'll join up together. You have a list of everybody's usernames in the game. I know, for example, Rocket League, that's one that I like now. My son and I play that. They have daily tournaments, at specific times a day that, that as a teacher, you don't even have to organize. They can all just jump in and play. So that's one way to do it. And then, or you can, make sure that you're having it at school during a specific time. So there's some flexibility in how you could run it there. I think the only other thing that I'll think about here from these slides is, depending on what age group that you're teaching, and that's something you can throw in the chat. I don't know if we asked that already, but what grade bands or grade levels are you teaching, or are you thinking about doing this for? If you could throw that in the chat, that'll help us out. But you might, think about and we'll talk about which games are most appropriate, but also, apps like Discord, where they're able to communicate with one another. You'll have to definitely look into whether that's age appropriate. And then, managing your social media, make sure you're in line with your district's use of social media with anything you do there. And then Holly,
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no need. The other thing to remember too, if you're a noob to all of this, that's okay, because like I prefaced earlier, there's a lot of acronyms like UGC, HSEL, Discord, Twitch. There's all these things coming at you where you're like, I am not a gamer. I don't know these things. That is okay. I didn't know them either like 6 weeks ago. I think that the big thing is just taking a step first, having the passion to say, hey, let's do this. And then as you move along, those things naturally come. You can always refer back to the slide deck and be able to see all of those acronyms and look them up when the time is appropriate. Like, for example, during that first meeting, setting up those accounts, you can then look up what is Discord or refer back there's a later slide that talks a little bit about that. So don't panic if we're mentioning some of these names or acronyms that you're not yet familiar for. With anything with learning, when you want to learn it, you'll learn it. And when the time is there to learn it, that time is there to learn it. So take a deep breath and know that it will come as you begin kind of going down that rabbit hole, as I have done with esports, and Eric has lived for quite some time.
Yeah,
Eric, if you want, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
was gonna say that's a perfect segue to Holly talking about. So, what do I need to know? Like, this may seem like a lot of information if you're new to the gamer world. So, and we can come back to the careers and talk a little bit about. So, what should I know if I'm going to run a program? So, there's really two approaches here that are kind of on a continuum. One is sponsoring a video game club, and the other would be I'm going to facilitate an esports program. You got to kind of figure out where you fall on that continuum, and I'll give you a little bit about what that means. So, sponsoring a video game club could simply be, I don't know if I'm ready to get into the competition aspect. I don't know a ton about gaming yet. I don't know if we have a budget for a whole lot of equipment, and I don't know how much interest we're going to have. Spoiler alert, you're going to get a lot of interest from kids, but you might be at a point where you're not ready to go big quite yet. And so an after school game club is a great way to kind of dip into that and kind of test the waters and get accustomed to it. So if you're going to run a video game club, everything that's required is pretty much everything you already know if you've ever ran an after school program. All of the logistics, getting permission from your admin, getting, securing a space, and a lot of the things Holly just mentioned are where you're going to start. But what's not required is necessarily knowing all of the games in and out. We're going to go through a couple of examples of good games and highlight some that are good starting points. But you don't need to necessarily be an expert, because you're not necessarily teaching a class. You're not even necessarily teaching them how to play the games. You might have some noobs joining you, right? You might have noob week or noob day where you get, or a separate day of the week for this club where you get your kids who are new to the game, and that's okay. Or maybe you integrate them in with the kids who have experience and ask it for it to be a teaching moment amongst those kids. So there's ways to manage that, but you don't have to necessarily be an expert. Now, if you were going to be a college esports coach, I have seen those job descriptions. They do require you to be ranked in those games. But at the middle school, and I'd argue even the high school level, is that necessary? Not really. You want to know some of the basic mechanics and be able to facilitate. But, I mentioned some of the sports I coached. I would consider myself a pretty knowledgeable basketball coach. In terms of soccer and baseball, I know the rules and I know how to organize kids and I know how to, facilitate practices. But I'm not as much of an expert. But I was able to get the kids together and play the game that they loved, and so it's kind of that same approach. Um, on the other hand, if you do want to get into an esports program and think of it as not just video game club where I'm just like, kind of letting the kids do, play the games and just have a safe space, but I want to go further and say, let's make this competitive. Let's really make this into a program. You will want to know a working knowledge of what games the kids are playing and generally how those games work. You want to be able to do basic tech support for those games. So when things go wrong, you're understanding how to fix it, or you're understanding how to fix glitches or address issues that are happening with the game. But again, a lot of the things you'll see on this list are really just the facilitation of a group of students. They'll figure out how to play the games. They'll figure out how to get better at them. They'll figure out how to coach each other. What they need you for is the organization piece, right? They'll need you for the coaching piece, how to have good sportsmanship, showing empathy for each other, making sure everything is fair and everyone's getting a chance, organizing an actual tournament. You don't have to join up and do esports with other schools. It's fun. You don't have to join up with the rest of the world. It's awesome that you can, but you can start just kind of having it in-house and doing in-house tournaments. I mentioned having coached both chess and robotics clubs. I've had both where I joined in existing, external tournaments where we traveled places, but I've also just done in-house where we put a bracket together and we let the kids, play against each other, and I just manage that bracket and organize everything for them. And sometimes that's enough, especially if you're just getting started. So I did mention a little bit about coaching on the college level, so I won't go too deep into that, but just kind of being aware that this is a thing that you are potentially preparing them for. Is that a lot of colleges are starting to come out with esports. I know locally to me here in the Chicagoland area, I just saw that DePaul University has a esports uh, facility and they have an esports team and it's pretty cool. And there's a job description, some things that you can click on to see a little bit about what that looks like. But just knowing that not only is this something that's catching on at the college level, but there's a variety of careers beyond just being a gamer, that students could be involved with esports and they could be involved with video games on a variety of levels if that's an interest for them, without having to just be a gamer or a YouTuber, right? And so there's a couple slides before this that'll show you some of those. And I'll let Holly take over to talk a little bit about scholarships here.
Yeah, and I know our time is, so Eric, I appreciate you taking the lead there to skip through some of that, and you can always come back. Really, the conclusion there of careers is in 2018, nearly 2/3 of the League of Legend players were majoring in STEM fields, and students that major in STEM fields, 93% of STEM careers have wages above the national average. So with those STEM careers is another pull for us to be able to say, hey, that there really is a channel for us to go the full pipeline into college and into a successful career through esports and having this club. So with scholarships, we have, and this average, I think it keeps going up. I just read the other day was 17 million. So it's over $15 million a year in scholarships that are being offered that you can find for your students. Once you have a club established, you'll learn that information, but it is important to know that when you're trying to sell this, if you're having to sell it to your administration, that there's a lot of money going out to students in scholarships for esports. And the National Association of College Esports, et cetera, recruiting is so much easier these days than it was going back 3 years ago. So yep, Eric, I just saw that. So yeah, we're going to move along here with time. Eric's sending me a personal chat about time. He's staying on top of me. Go ahead, Eric. Where do we want to go next? Do you want to, I think league participation is really, if you keep going, really quickly, I do want to mention this, and it's not rushing it, but if you're brand new here, three main things that you want to take away from this is one, Illinois is one of the very few states for that offers an established esports league. It is called IHSEA. It's a governed organization, and it offers, I think, 6 games. It's overnight for or sorry Overwatch, Fortnite, Rocket League, Super Smash Brothers, League of Legends, and another one where they set up those games, those tournaments to be able to play. Once you fill out that interest form, this is one of those first steps. Once you fill out that interest form, they will send you a link for a Discord account. And that's where that IT department is important. Your school will create a Discord account, and then IHSEA will then send you a link to be able to get added to their Discord. Another one here is either HSEL or Play Versus. There are a few other ones, but HSEL, it consists of over 80,000 plus students, 3,000 schools, and it's the largest esports league for high schools. Same thing, host those games. You have a free and paid membership that you can look at. And then Play Versus is more money. They have an exclusive contract with NFHS, and a premier agreement with League of Legends as well. And the pricing is there. But just begin thinking, like, you don't have to create and host all of these tournaments or games. You have league participation that does that for you. You can go to the next one there, Eric. Channels, there's Twitch TV. That's where you have auto moderated tools that you can watch live streaming of your events at your school that you can share out on your Twitter. And then there's some information about Discord, more towards the tech director. So Eric, if you want to wrap up here, I guess with items to consider when budgeting. There's some peripherals in there, and then also hardware stuff in there as well that you can share. Oh, the other one is apparel. Membership is huge. Every single sport has jerseys. And this may seem trivial to you. It is not trivial to students. And it is incredibly important that if you're going to start a team, there's a link there that can take you to someone who sells apparel. There's a lot of other places that you can buy apparel. This was one that was just recommended. But definitely consider having your students put their input in and create a jersey for your school. Numbers are so important to kids, and having that physical, being able to identify them as a part of a team is very important. I can't stress that enough. So Eric, you want to add anything there?
Holly, I thought I'd never get to mention that I purposefully wore my robotics club team shirt.
There you go.
That's got my name on it there with our sponsors on the arm. So I finally got the opportunity to drop that. Yeah, absolutely. One thing to think about, some schools consider having kind of a rotating membership for their esports club. So like they have their seasons match the sports seasons at the school, so that they can consistently have a group of kids that comes in, during the fall when it might be, I don't know, soccer season. They have one game that's being played. And then at the end of that fall sports season during the winter, when a lot of their kids are going to basketball, they have a new round and a different game that's being played in their club. Especially that's popular at the middle school level, where kids are still figuring out what they like and what they want to do. And that way, one, you've got a little consistency in that like 9 to 10 week period, right? And two, you give everybody a chance to participate, and you've got a variety of games going on. So with that in mind, when it comes to the apparel, you might, and some of the equipment, you might take that into consideration. But otherwise, I think whatever you can do to have something like Holly said that identifies students as being part of the team is super important.
Yeah, the next few slides, you can share this with your IT people, but it's just with trying to figure out, which Eric's going to talk about here and hopefully wrap up for you all, is when thinking about the PC system requirements, if you're using used devices, what the minimum specs are for that. So feel free to check out those links when that time comes to figure out what you're playing on. If you are playing on a PC, to check out these links to be able to make sure that your PC is compatible, or if you have to get anything additional to what you're working with. And then as well, Eric, the next few slides, the same external domains, if you needed to get more information out to your IT person to help them along the way with this endeavor in esports. And then finally, I think the next one is purchasing or blocks. Here's some of the things. It says buy coffee, firewalls, buy coffee for your IT people. They're going to be huge at helping you get you started and allowing permissions and opening up some of those blocks. And in the very top right, it says filtering. You can't filter like Discord or some of the information on Twitch, some of those other channels. So just being aware of that.
Yeah, and so just briefly, and we don't have to get super technical, but some of the things that you'll want to know if you're doing competitive gaming online, um, the speed of your internet connection is huge,
It
especially,
matters.
yeah, big time, especially if you are competing or playing against people who are not in the same building as you. A couple of things to know is that a wired connection, an Ethernet wired connection, is always going to be faster and better than a wireless, regardless of how good your wireless system is. So anything you can do to wire those machines, if you're using like a PlayStation or a Nintendo Switch, there's dongles you can get to connect your Ethernet to them. So definitely, again, make friends with your tech department. Terms that you'll hear are FPS, frames per second, ping, latency is another one that comes up. These are all different measures that will that are numeric measures to let you know how good basically your connection is going to be with what you're doing versus what your opponent's doing in the game, and everything syncing up so you have a good real-time experience, and there's not what they call lag, where the game kind of, you fall behind what's going on in the game and then it rushes to try and keep up, and it makes it very difficult for several games if you don't have that going on. So just some things to think about and get to know there. And then Holly, purchasing.
Yeah, just when you're ready and you're looking to purchase your items or your equipment, there's a few different programs here that you can look into for purchasing. I've been trying to include a multitude of links there, but ultimately CDW and SHI there. I don't know how you pronounce that, if it's Shy or SHI. Do you know, Santos?
I do not. I would have just
So
gone with Shy and rolled with it.
yeah, Shy. So just make sure you mention if you're ILTPP member. If you're not, there is a link there to be able to get some discounted rates through the ILTPP membership, which is free. So yeah, feel free to check that out. And there is an example. It's a very broad example there at the very bottom of a school that it was their school's purchasing, like what they wanted to purchase for that. Yeah, I think equipment proposal there. So if you wanted just a very simple one, you could check that out.
All right, so just briefly to wrap up here, let's just kind of get you familiar with some of the games. We can go on and on into every single one of the games, but to give you kind of an overview of some good options that are out there, there's a few listed here that are pretty popular. But again, this is going to really depend on what grade level you're doing this with. We have we have a term called first person shooter. Those are those games where you're looking at everything from the first person perspective and you're going around shooting at other people, and you want to be careful with those. If you're anything below the high school level, I'm hearing from several other high school folks that they're like, we're not even going to touch those. We're not going to get into that world. They can do that on their own time, and that's fine. And you can go to several sources like Common Sense Media to see what's involved in the game and what their rating of it is. What you've got here in this link that's on this slide, which is slide number 43, is a spreadsheet we've put together and we're maintaining just for informational purposes. And I can drop that in the chat for you all as well. That talks to you, that just lists out a lot of the games that are popular, and then we've got some flags in there to let you know which ones are free, which ones are available on which platforms. We've got PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and then PC and Mac. Some of their maturity ratings and levels, whether or not they're elementary age friendly. I might stick with those even if I'm a middle school teacher. And so then FPS right here stands for first person shooter. Is this a first person shooter game? If you see that box checked, if you're in a younger age group, you might just say, I'm not going to even bother with those at all. And then how many players can play maximum? So this is an important one too, when you think about, how many players you're going to have in your club and how you're going to get everybody involved. So just a quick rundown of a few good entry points. Minecraft, you might be surprised to see this on the list of esports, but this slide number 44 has a lot of really great links from Microsoft who owns Minecraft, who that talks all about Minecraft as an esport. Many of your kids, especially middle school and younger, are going to already be involved in Minecraft, but there are multiple build battles and competitions that are built in, especially if you have Minecraft Education Edition, which I believe is only $5 per license. And if you're a Microsoft district already or have a Microsoft account, you may already have access to this and may not know it. So talk to your tech folks. But Minecraft is a great place to start as well for esports. Rocket League, I mentioned earlier, this is a favorite of mine and my son's. It's essentially soccer with cars. There's various variations of the game, but that's basically all there is to it. And it's a lot of fun because if you've got like a Switch or I believe this is on PlayStation as well. Let me take a quick look. Yeah, it's on several different platforms. You can have kids play this in-house because it goes up to 3 versus 3. So even if you've just got a couple of consoles, they can do that, or they can also jump online and play against others. They have built-in tournaments throughout the day. And there's also several of those companies that Holly mentioned earlier that organize leagues for you, have Rocket League involved as an option. So that's a great starting point. Sports obviously is a good, safe one in terms of, appropriateness for kids. There's a couple of good NBA games out there that are a lot of fun and can be played online. Again, if you're of the Mario generation like myself, you may already be familiar with Super Smash Brothers, which, as you can see, does involve some, a bit of cartoon violence, but it's basically, Nintendo characters slapping each other around, and it's a ton of fun. You can have up to 8 in one game at a time. They can be played online. You might also know Mario Kart. That's another really great one. Many battles have been fought in my own household over Mario Kart. Getting into some of the role player games, there's League of Legends. You've probably, if you haven't lived under a rock in the last 10 years, you've heard a kid mention the game Fortnite. Obviously a first-person shooter. There's no blood or gore. You can see players are vaporized as they're shot. So, proceed with caution and determine on your own whether you think that one's appropriate, as is Overwatch and some others. So that's just a quick rundown of some of the more popular games. Obviously, you can go to this list and Google any one of these games, or go to YouTube and look them up, and you can see a quick run through or breakdown of what it looks like and see live action of somebody playing those games. So that's a rundown of those games. And Holly, if you'd like to bring us to a close here, I'll pass it to you.
For reference later, the cooldown area, and Eric, you can just kind of click through there. There's a sample schedule that you can see that you could create at your facility or district or school. And then there's also some topics for non-play. So that day where you're doing your cooldown, your non-play, you're watching back on your games, your replay, your recordings, you can talk about some of these topics and look at some of this to add to some of your curriculum that you want to add, or your content when talking with students, and also some of the positives that you look through there as well. Slide, I think it's number 9 or number 8. Sorry, I think it's 8. Keep going. Yep, the Foozle. So here with Foozle, the final boss in a game here. So completely wrapping up the minimum, the target, the outrageous, the Monday versus the someday. Hopefully you have an idea of this, and we've provided you with a lot of information to be able to think about that. There's all of your resources here that you can come back to, as well, that you can check out when you're ready. Everything that all those stats that were added, you can find them in the references page as well. Feel free to check out the recording on the LTC events, or the events page there. I'm sorry, the webinars page, that you can check out some other events coming up and the recorded webinar. And last page there, thank you so much for joining. If you want to leave us a message, or if you need to contact us for further information, feel free to do so. And Eric, I'll leave this for you. Any last thoughts here?
If you're not sure if you want to do this or not, I'd say, like so many other things, you just want to dive in, find an entry point. And it could be as simple as just starting a club where kids get together and play games, and it can grow from there. So go for it is my advice.
Well, hey, thanks guys very much for sharing your wisdom and your experience with esports.